Hi, my name is David Sloan, and welcome back to the Cameraman Lectures. This is Lecture 9, addressing Cameraman episodes 32 through 34. These three episodes, Nancy and Roanoke, Just a Friendly Visit, and The Collaborators, center around one central revelation having to do with Nancy and Lacey. You might remember that very early on in these lectures I mentioned that the scenes were written to only give a perspective from outside of the minds of the characters, watching them as the cameraman would watch them. These three episodes are a demonstration of the advantage that I as a writer have in writing from that perspective. If we had known early on what Nancy's thoughts were, her surprise would not have been possible. More importantly, Nancy and Lacey's understanding that the cameraman is not truly omniscient, that Kevin Dane has many human failings, like arrogance and self-centeredness, and that the cameras he has don't read minds, shape their plan. By preparing to undertake a project to give credit for the cameraman technology to Darius, someone that Kevin hated, they hoped to be able to draw Kevin out. And it didn't exactly work as they intended. This raises the question that Baker proposed at the beginning of the season about Nancy's true level of competency. Baker's reasons for questioning Nancy's competency turned out to be based on a false premise. Nancy knew all along who the real cameraman was and what Lacey's medical condition was. So those revelations were not news to her. She had been purposefully trying to keep them down. But the truth about Nancy isn't much better. If Nancy's plan was to unleash Lacey to find Kevin, trying to leverage their close but toxic bond for her own interests and trying to catch them both together, that was kind of the equivalent of letting loose a poisonous snake in a house to catch a rat. One only pursues a plan like that out of desperation, and Nancy may have been depending on her own astute understanding of Lacey and her psychology to justify the move, reasoning that it would be easier to catch them together than it would be one at a time. But that plan clearly fell apart, leaving Nancy to now have to deal with the faults and true ramifications of her decision-making. And that's a pretty bleak prospect for her, and one that puts her into an even more desperate hole than she was when she started. And that will definitely play into how she makes her next few choices. Luckily, she has the character of the sympathetic Captain Casper to give her a shot at staying in the game. We are also introduced to the warehouse in Roanoke on Luck Avenue, where Kevin and Milo have been living in the years after the escape, and where the machine that Omer brought to Dura Mountain came from. There's a lot of there's a lot of things about why Milo was there and why Lacey was there that we have yet to fully discover. So stay tuned for those secrets. The event at the warehouse is really important because it sets Milo, Lacey, Nancy, and Baker on new tracks that will collide partially in the last episode of the season. We will be returning to this warehouse and to the seedy Schiaparelli's restaurant across the street a few more times. The idea for the warehouse was inspired by places that I used to pass where I grew up in Manchester, Connecticut. For example, there was a warehouse right next to Verplank Elementary School, where I went to school, and it was this anonymous white building that I used to pass all the time, but I never really saw people going in or coming out, and I never really knew what was inside or what they did there. You might have obscure buildings in your own town where you don't really know what they do, but you don't really care enough to find out what they do, and something truly insane could be going on inside, but you'd never know it. Schiaparelli's was similarly inspired by small, rundown strip mall restaurants and pizza places right next to fields near power lines and transformer stations. And these scenes, like you see in that little corner of Roanoke, are visible up and down the East Coast and elsewhere. There actually is a Luck Avenue in Roanoke, but it doesn't necessarily have all of those things all in the same place. I am excited for you to read the next few episodes for one final major reveal that will propel our characters right through to the end. So, keep your eyes open. You never know what you're going to see.